20 years ago, Air India Flight 182 left Canadian airspace and entered the history books as the target of Canada's worst act of terrorism. Tomorrow, friends and family of the people who died on board that flight will gather in Ireland to remember. And today, some of them met the people in the town of Cork who helped them with the recovery effort on that fateful day in June of 1985.
The Air India Memorial site in Ahakista is buzzing with people, but not with the relatives of the victims. Instead, with construction workers putting the finishing touches on the details for tomorrow's anniversary. But while the crew hurries to finish the site, the families have traveled to Cork, about 2 hours away. Relatives of the victims of the Air India bombing are returning to the hospital where 20 years ago they identified their loved ones.
It feels very awkward being here, uncomfortable, but in a way it brings back some good memories if there are some, and those were of the people.
The occasion, a special service in memory of those who died. Eddie and Natasha Madden of Vancouver were 8 and 4 when they lost their father.
The last 20 years have been a roller coaster of emotions for us, and this isn't any different. Strangely enough, I think it's just very comforting to be here. It's just like we find some kind of comfort zone when we come here, and it's hard to explain.
When the disaster happened, Cork was the closest city, and the hospital here was mobilized to treat any survivors. But soon that changed, and medical personnel were then facing the arduous task of identifying the bodies.
We set up viewing rooms with flowers and the smell of incense, because an Indian friend of ours told us that's what they would like. And so when they actually came down to view the dead, they weren't exposed to 131. They actually were only exposed to the one body.
It's just something that's stayed with us for something we thought about every day since it happened.
Daniel Aron and Mark Stagg were at sea with the Irish Merchant Marines when they were called to a plane crash off the Cork coast. They have never spoken on TV about what they saw.
For several hours, rather naively, and because we're not trained for that kind of work, we thought we were on a rescue mission. And as Danny said, it never was. It was a recovery mission.
The 20th anniversary comes just 3 months after 2 men were acquitted in the Air India bombing. And since then, the families have been calling for a public inquiry. And tonight, the man who's advising the government on the issue gave the strongest indication yet that he will recommend it happens.
I don't think we can walk away from this event as a country. It seems to me that we simply can't say, well, you know, the 2 guys got off and that's all we know. And, you know, in fact, from my preliminary review of the file, I'd say we know a lot more than that. And there's a lot more we have to come to terms with and have to deal with.